Hi, this is Zulfiqar and you're watching Social Sciences. We're going to discuss about society in sociology. Society refers to a group of people who share a defined territory and a culture. Society is often understood as the basic structure and interactions of a group of people or the network of relationship between entities. A distinction is made between society and culture in sociology. Culture refers to the meanings given to symbol or the process of meaning making that take place in a society. Culture is distinct from society in that it adds meanings to relationship. All human societies have a culture, and culture can only exist where there is society. If we talk about distinction between these two components of human social life, it is primarily for analytical purpose. For example, sociologists can study the transmission of cultural elements or artifacts within a society. If we talk about difference between society and group, we can say that society is a group of people with common territory, interactions, and culture. And on the other hand, your social groups consist of two or more people who interact and identify with one another. Social group is a set of people who interact on the basis of shared expectations and who possesses some degree of common identity. The largest group we study are the societies. And if we talk about societal development, the sociological understanding of societal development relies heavily on the work of Grenade, Lansky, and Lansky outlined some of the more commonly seen organizational structures in human societies. And classifications of human societies can be based on the primary means of subsistence and the political structure and the environment and interactions and time. That's how different type of societies across the world change based on these all elements. Over here, we are more concerned with the subsistence strategies and on the basis of which we are trying to classify societies into different levels. Subsistence strategies are the ones through which any society uses certain kind of technology to provide for the needs of its members. Human groups begin as hunter-gatherers and move towards pastoralism and or horticulturalism, develop towards an agrarian society, and ultimately end up undergoing a period of industrialization, with the potential for developing a service industry following industrialization. The reason this is presented as a model is because not all societies pass through every stage. Some societies have stopped at the pastoral or horticultural stage, though these may be temporary pauses due to economic niches that will likely disappear in time. Some societies may also jump stages as a result of the introduction of technology from alien societies and culture. Another reason for hesitancy in presenting these categories as distinct groups is that there is often overlap in the subsistence systems used in a society. Some pastoralist societies also engage in some measure of horticultural food production, and industrial societies have agrarian components, so it is quite confusing in nature. Food production is the highest priority and it carried out through the use of human and animal labor, and we can classify societies mainly into two groups, that is pre-industrial societies and industrial societies. And later on we also classify societies into post-industrial societies as well. We're going to discuss about these things later. First, we're going to discuss about pre-industrial societies, in which we are going to see hunting and gathering societies, pastoral societies, horticulture societies, and then we're moving towards agriculture societies. Hunter and gatherer societies demonstrate the strongest dependence on the environment of the various types of pre-industrial societies. As the basic structure of human society until about 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, these groups were based around kinship or tribes. The hunter-gatherer's way of life is based on the exploitation of wild plants and animals. They relied on their surroundings for survival. They hunted wild animals and foraged for uncultivated plants for food. Typically, in hunter-gatherer societies, men hunt larger wild animals and women gather and hunt smaller animals. When resources become scarce, the group moved to a new area to find sustenance, meaning they were nomadic in nature. These societies were common until several hundred years ago, but today only a few hundred remain in existence, such as indigenous Australian tribes, sometimes referred to as Aborigines. Hunter-gatherer groups are quickly disappearing as the world's population explodes. Hunter-gatherers use material available in the wild to construct shelters or rely on naturally occurring shelters like overhangs. These shelters give them protection from predators and the elements. Hunter-gatherer societies also tend to have non-hierarchical social structure. So this is not always the case, but to some extent they are non-hierarchical in nature. Because hunter-gatherers tend to be nomadic, they generally do not have the possibility to store surplus food. As a result, full-time leaders, bureaucrats, or artisans are rarely supported by hunter-gatherer societies. The hierarchical egalitarian in hunter-gatherer societies tend to extend to gender-based egalitarianism as well. Although disputed, many anthropologists believe gender egalitarianism in hunter-gatherer societies stems from the lack of control over food production, lack of food surplus, which can be used for control, and an equal gender contribution to kin and cultural survival. Pastoralist society is a society in which the primary means of subsistence is domestication of livestock. It is often the case that, like hunter and gatherers, pastoralists are nomadic, moving seasonally in search of fresh pastures and water for their animals. Employment of a pastoralist subsistence system often results in greater population densities and the development of both social hierarchies and division in labor. As it is more likely there will be a surplus of food. Pastoralist societies still exist today. For instance, in Australia, the vast semi-arid areas in the interior of the country contain pastoral run called sheep stations. These areas may be thousands of square kilometers in size. The number of livestock allowed in these areas is regulated in order to reliably sustain them, providing enough food and water for the stock. Horticultural societies are societies in which the primary means of subsistence is the cultivation of crops using hand tools. Like pastoral societies, the cultivation of crops increases population densities and also increases, and as a result of food surpluses allows for a division of labor in society as well. Horticulture differs from agriculture in that way that agriculture employ animals, machinery, or some other non-human means to facilitate the cultivation of crops, while horticulture relies solely on human for crop cultivation, and these tribes living in particular areas use the technique of slash and burn, ways through which they are trying to cultivate their land and then they try to produce a surplus for themselves. They're going to have agrarian societies and allows a much greater density of population than can be supported by hunting and gathering, and allows for the accumulation of excess product to keep for winter use or to sell for profit. The ability of farmers to feed large number of people whose activities have nothing to do with material production was a crucial factor in the rise of standing armies. The agriculturalism of the Sumerians allowed them to embark on an unprecedented territorial expansion, making them the first empire builders. Not long after the Egyptians, powered by effective farming of the Nile Valley, achieved a population density from which enough warriors could be drawn for a territorial expansion, more than tripling the Sumerian Empire particular area. While pastoral and horticultural societies used small temporary tools such as digging sticks or hoes, agricultural societies relied on permanent tools for survival. Around 3000 BCE, an explosion of new technology known as the Agricultural Revolution made farming possible and profitable. Farmers learned to rotate the types of crops grown on their fields and to reuse waste products such as fertilizers, leading to better harvests and bigger surpluses of food. New tools for digging and harvesting were made of metal, making them more effective and longer lasting. Human settlements grew into towns and cities, and particularly bountiful regions became center of trade and commerce. This is also the age in which people had the time and comfort to engage in more thoughtful activities such as music, poetry, and philosophy. This period became referred as the dawn of civilization by some because of the development of leisure and humanities. Craftspeople were able to support themselves through the production of creative, decorative, or thought-provoking aesthetic objects and writings. As resources became more plentiful, social classes became more divisive. Those who had more resources could afford better living and developed into a class of nobility. Difference in social standing between men and women increased as cities expanded. Ownership and preservation of resources become a pressing concern. 9th century gave rise to feudal societies. These societies contained a strict hierarchical system of power based around land ownership and protection. The nobility, known as lords, placed vassals in charge of pieces of land, and in return for the resources that the land provided, vassals promised to fight for their lords. These individual pieces of land, known as fiefdoms, were cultivated by the lower class. In return for maintaining the land, peasants were guaranteed a place to live and protection from outside enemies. Power was handed down through family lines, with peasant families serving lords for generations and generations. Ultimately, the social and economic system of feudalism would fail and replaced by capitalism and the technological advances of the industrial era. Industrial society in the 18th century, Europe experienced a dramatic rise in technological invention, and this was the era known as the Industrial Revolution. What made this period remarkable was the number of new inventions that influenced people's daily lives. Within a generation, tasks that had until this point required months of labor became achievable in a matter of days. And before the Industrial Revolution, work was largely person or animal based, relying on human workers or horses. But with the advent of steam power, everything changed. Instead of paying artisans to spin wool and weave it into cloth, people turned to textile mills that produce fabric quickly at a better price and often with better quality. Rather than planting and harvesting field by hand, farmers were able to purchase mechanical seeders and threshing machines that caused agriculture productivity to soar, and the quality and accessibility of education and healthcare soared. Gas lights allowed increased visibility in the dark, and towns and cities developed a nightlife. And one of the results of increased productivity and technology was the rise of urban centers. Life was changing quickly, and the long established traditions of the agricultural eras did not apply to life in the larger cities. Masses of people were moving to a new environment and often found themselves faced with uncomfortable conditions of filth, overcrowding, and poverty. And social scientists emerged to study the relationship between the individual members of society and society as a whole. It was during this time that power moved from the hands of the aristocracy and old money to business way. Big names got the new power, become the new power players, and using their influence in business to control aspects of government as well. Eventually, concerns over the exploitation of workers led to the formation of different kind of unions and laws that set mandatory conditions for the employees. Now we are in the era which is known as post-industrial era. A post-industrial society is a society in which the primary means of subsistence is derived from service-oriented work as opposed to agriculture or industry. It is important to note here that the term post-industrial is still debated in part because it is the current state of society. It is difficult to name a phenomena while it is occurring. Post-industrial societies are often marked by an increase in the size of the service sector or jobs that perform services rather than creating goods such as industry. Either the outsourcing of or extensive use of mechanization in manufacturing and an increasing in the amount of information technology, often leading to an information age. All these are considered as the main highlights of the post-industrial society. In post-industrial societies, the strong emphasis is on the science and technology, and society became stable with the help of these inventions and this technology and medicine. All these sectors contribute in the stability of the society. It is all about today's lecture. If you like this video and found it useful, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.